Fit Marketing podcast is brought to you by me, Amanda Bear. We'll talk about topics that you don't normally read about in marketing literature that tell you more about the what, but not the how of marketing in the real world. You'll hear great conversations with marketing, communications, and media leaders and up-and-comers who've been testing and learning and paving the way every day. Visit futurefitmarketing.com.au for access to resources and past podcasts. In this episode, we explore how good data literacy is in marketing teams. In business these days, a good level of data literacy is an expectation, not a nice to have. Traditional and purist roles like the brand marketer have started to diminish, with more companies skewing roles to growth, performance, and customer marketing. I've read a number of reports highlighting poor data literacy as a significant roadblock to marketing success. Frankly, in order to have a seat at the table, you really need to ensure you're speaking not only to brand health, NPS, and engagement metrics, but it's also important that as a marketer, you have a clear understanding of your marketing expenditure to revenue ratios, with metrics like cost to serve, your payback period, understanding retention with metrics like LTV to CAC ratio and churn. Now, I realise not all metrics are the same across different categories and industries, but the combination of brand health, your marketing metrics combined with business metrics to draw insights and really paint a story should be universal. Given the pressure on marketing teams these days to deliver both short and long-term results, and let's be frank, it's much shorter than longer these days, have agency partnerships evolved to better support marketing teams to improve not only effectiveness but data capabilities as well? Future Fit Marketing interviewed James Greaney, who is the Chief Data Officer from CHEP Network, working closely with a variety of clients including Samsung, Telstra and Mazda. James heads up a team of data scientists, insights analysts, and information security specialists delivering capabilities along the full spectrum of analytics. That equates to everything from dashboards and reports with data-led insights that can inform business strategy right through to developing machine learning algorithms. Having a data science background in advertising agencies with proximity in London initially, then Clemenger BBDO in Melbourne, James was a founding member of CHEP Proximity, which is now CHEP Network. We are lucky enough to have James Greaney as our latest Future Fit Marketing podcast guest. Welcome, James.
Hello, thank you for having me.
What we wanted to dig into today is all about data literacy in marketing teams. And I really want to dig into what good looks like and where are the gaps that you're seeing with a lot of the companies that you're working for. Why don't you give us an overview of CHEP Network, what you guys do, and the types of clients that you engage with?
We're a full-service creative agency, and full service means essentially producing the ads, developing the idea, buying the media. We sort of do the strategy behind things as well. So, of course, there's sort of the typical sort of brand planners, customer experience, user experience, my team of data analysts and data scientists. And then, of course, we have a large tech capability as well to sort of bring many of these things to life through platforms and so on and so forth. And then I suppose the sort of the final cog in the wheel is the PR capability that we also have. So we do, the full breadth of everything. Our biggest client is Samsung, which we've had for about 3 or 4 years. And then we have large clients with Telstra, IAG Insurance, so that's NRMA predominantly. And then one of our longest clients, which has been a client with us since CHE, as it was back then in the 70s, was founded, is Mazda. So, we've had a very, very long relationship with those guys. And then we have other relationships as well with a few other clients. So, Danone or Nutricia is a significant one, and 7-Eleven as well. So yeah, lots of different types of clients. I'm really keen to make sure that we as an agency are working with them as a partner and evolving their business as best and effectively as we can.
So you've got huge breadth and depth there. Can you tell me what sort of challenges they're approaching you with to solve?
We have lots of, I suppose, different types of challenges. It's interesting. just yesterday, we had an internal session where three of our clients we'd put together some challenges for Rebel Sport, for 7-Eleven, and for Qantas. We were sort of, wanting to sort of put it out to the agency, sort of get some ideas from different areas. Rebel Sport was about the fact that the Women's World Cup is coming. So how do we, really amplify and sort of, celebrate that capability after the Euro 2022 success that's happened over in Europe. Women's football's at a sort of a big exciting moment, and how do we sort of take that on to the next phase. Qantas was sort of making sure that we can get the brand trusted as well. Obviously there's difficult times for lots of different brands at the moment, and sort of Qantas sort of very much is at the forefront of some of those conversations. And then 7-Eleven sort of I think again was how can we make that brand sort of stand out and sort of be positioned away from maybe sort of the fast food heartland and stuff like that. So challenges like that are sort of coming to us. There's then the more traditional ones such as Samsung. We need to sell phones, and we need to do things, and we've got a very big competitor who also sells phones, and so we need to make sure that we're selling more. So there's lots of different types of challenges that we're constantly getting, and I think also as well, we try to sort of work with the clients so they're not just tasks coming to us. We're sort of trying to solve and think about how that business can sort of evolve itself, and how we can, I suppose, sort them and sort of solve challenges that maybe aren't as obvious, or bigger opportunities that sort of can ladder up to something bigger as well.
You guys have always been quite strong in being data-led and the technology space as well. Have things changed quite a bit in the last sort of 5 to 10 years?
In the first 5 to 10, yes, probably. I think the way that we've structured ourselves has been something that is constantly having to shift and change. So technology specifically, we're agnostic in terms of what we look at, and the reason we have sort of chosen that strategy, I suppose, is the fact that clients have already made investments in huge technology stacks, and have been chosen to go with the Adobe route or the Salesforces or whoever it might be. So we've had to be able to work in those environments. They're big investments that have been made, big decisions, and sort of actually activating those platforms is really the challenge that we've sort of been brought in to deliver and to sort of bring those capabilities to life. And from a data point of view, that's constantly sort of evolving and changing. So, one of the biggest ones, of course, was, privacies and things like that started to sort of really come through. So we made a pretty big commitment to sort of get everything shipshape with our ISO certification to make sure that was something that we had. Our processes were buttoned down and everything was, working. So across the agency, there's things in place to make sure that we are adhering to all of the policies and processes that we need to. And then, of course, data just gets generated from all different sources. So, as we've brought media into the agency in the past 5 years, that's been a whole new source of data and information that previously we'd probably not been quite as proficient in. I think that's really helped some of our marketing effectiveness narratives and sort of, around the sort of attribution discussions and so on and so forth that we can really start to sort of have with clients to sort of help them evolve and understanding what marketing's contribution is. I mean, I think marketing ultimately is one of the first areas to sort of be a casualty of any sort of, recession or whatever it might be. And so we need to sort of make sure that there's evidence that it's working and what its contribution is. So yes, that having that sort of wider data source and along with many others has been really, really valuable for us to be able to support that and have those discussions at the C-suite level, I suppose.
I want to expand on something that you mentioned about being technology agnostic. Knowing the recruitment environment is pretty tough. If you're having to recruit from, breadth of depth in terms of expertise in technology, and obviously things changing a lot from a data perspective, are there any foundations or principles you have around the recruitment and getting the right people in the team?
I think culture is always a big thing that we try to sort of focus on. So yes, the skill sets are really, really important, but we really need people to work in with others to make sure that they are contributing comprehensively that way. So that's always something that we look for. The agency cultures, yeah, just something that's important that we can sort of galvanize and bring that forward. And then I think that we just have to make sure that we're supporting the training and development of people. It has to be sort of an environment that people want to come to sort of evolve their careers. And so, so certifications work very well for the individuals, but they also really benefit us because then we know we've got the capabilities in those spaces. And so that's something that we very much look to do to make sure that we're sort of, at the forefront of things in the Adobe, the Salesforce, or the Tableau environments, whatever it might be across all the different types of areas, so that our staff and our resources are just very much sort of fit for purpose for what we want them to do. But it is tough. It is definitely tough. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the technology sector certainly had lots of people, being wowed with with some big offers and so on and so forth.
Given that you're working with a span of different industries, different types of businesses, and different problems, without naming names, I'm really curious on your opinion about what the shape of those marketing teams look like. Are there any particular characteristics, skills that are particularly good?
Yes, I mean, look, teams have evolved over the years and certainly sort of got a lot more strings to their bow. I mean, we still sort of we do quite a number of sort of lunch and learn sessions, if you like, and sort of try to sort of get clients engaged in lots of different topics. So we're doing one at the moment, which is storytelling with data. So one of the big things that we have is to sort of try and get people more comfortable with data. And it was really interesting. We were presenting to a client the other day, and the first comment was, well, this will be interesting because I hate data. And by the end of it, that person was really engaged. I mean, I wasn't there. It was one of the guys in my team was doing the session, but he said by the end they were really engaged and they were really enjoying it. And I think it was interesting that, sometimes that that sort of comment is the fact that I think they think that data is about doing a model or something very complex and sort of coding in Python or whatever it might be. But actually, really, it's numbers that we're all very familiar with and starting to sort of use it differently and properly and quantifying and sort of, adding value to sort of our sort of general strategic thinking. And as we start to sort of position it that way, it starts to become quite engaging and people want to sort of work with it. So we sort of certainly make sure that we're providing those types of things to clients to sort of, hopefully help them expand and change some of their thinking. It's really interesting. I mean, one of the things we did years ago, we had a person in the team, an account manager. She'd come from client side. We actually got her to present to the agency and sort of give us an understanding of a day in the life of a client, for the simple reason, I think, that we as an agency almost can't believe that, the client can't make time for us. And, actually the client's got a lot of things going on that really the agency is only 20% of their concentration. So to have that, I think, awareness and sort of respect, it was really, really important. It was something that possibly, we maybe sort of hadn't, we thought we were the everything to them and sort of their job, but absolutely not. So we try to sort of give them skills. We try to evolve them and make them sort of hopefully better marketers with some of the skills that we can empower them with, and that's hopefully really successful.
How you're framing that is your team are having to, actually provide sessions. And I'm actually mortified that someone in marketing would say, I don't like data. I'm just really curious about the teams that you work with. What is the stage of their literacy and what are the areas of focus?
Oh, I think, yes, it was probably a comment that was, not reflective of everybody. I agree. I think that, the stages of literacy, I think everybody's had to adopt and had to sort of take on, the sort of the prolific amount of information that they're being provided with is just, huge. so to answer your question, they're getting better and they're getting sort of more capable with the information that they're getting. What we do need to do to support that, I think, is to try and sort of identify the key elements that we need to sort of have the focus on. So sometimes all of that information is great, but actually there's no clear action or so what or whatever that we need to sort of that presents itself. So that's what we do spend a lot of time with, to try and sort of, curate that information in a way that then is something that can be used and is useful, and can be shared up and into the organizations. But yes, people are definitely getting much more respectful, I suppose, or understanding of data, because it's just much more of part of their daily job. And there's some very talented and sort of capable people who are working with information, and because that's their job within their business, they know it incredibly well. So we really have to sort of work as a partnership. They're the experts, they know that environment, they know that data, then they know the nuances. And so really, we try to sort of obviously collaborate very closely with those guys to really sort of take it to the next step and unearth some of the things that maybe they've been sitting on that they've not realised were as important as they are.
I might expand on that. Quite often you see clients that withhold information, as say, potentially is proprietary information, and you can't do your best work if you don't have everything in front of you. Can you describe the best partnerships and relationships that you built with clients over time? What does good look like?
Good looks like just really collaborative, working closely, having a good partnership, having regular sort of conversations, and really being an extension of their team. I think that one of the things that we're always very conscious to do is not to be seen as positioning ourselves as someone's going to come in and, do the job that they just weren't able to do. We're trying to augment them. We're sort of trying to sort of add in the skill sets that, really are going to take it up another level. So, relationships are really important with certain individuals, regular check-ins, understanding sort of what they're working on, what they've got, what information, what sources they work with. So we spend a lot of time, managing that sort of type of relationship, working those through. And we very often find that, they've tried and been surfacing some of that information, but just to the wrong audience. And so what we're able to do is just act as that conduit and sort of maybe work with them to translate it for different audiences, and just start to get some success that way. I think that, yes, like I'm a pretty positive guy, I'm pretty optimistic about things. So I always sort of come out thinking that relationships are really good, but there's definitely some that are better than others. There's nothing worse being in an agency and getting that brief land on December 22nd and expect that the answers are going to be presented to the client, or the client expecting the answers are going to be presented to them on January the 10th, because that just is incredibly demoralizing, and the relationship just really sours as a result. So I think respect obviously comes from both sides, and then clients typically know that they're going to get much more out of their agency if they work with them in a collaborative way, and sort of obviously have that respect. And very often, and most cases, that's the way. The relationships can change, and they do sort of manifest themselves in different ways. But yeah, real conversations and starting to sort of expose some of that stuff is really, really important.
You've been at CHEP Network for quite a while now, and you would have seen evolutions of marketing teams as well. Can you point to anything substantial that has changed in the types of roles that are coming out, the who you're working with? Are you extending into areas like the CX side or product? What is the shape of the teams looking like?
Yeah, so I think that the big shift, I think, was some of the MarTech that started to really come in a number of years ago. There was a resistance a little bit to it, and sort of then a realization that it had to be done. And going back to a point I made earlier, our relationship very often was really just trying to sort of get some of those initial use cases to be stood up, and to make sure that they were starting to deliver on some value, and sort of the wider business could start to understand what the capability was. As a result, teams changed, different skill sets started to come in, incredibly, knowledgeable people working with different platforms was starting to sort of be included into marketing that, historically really hadn't been there. And so, yes, that was sort of the major shift. I think also, what we've noticed from our side particularly is that there's there used to be a creative agency and a media agency in the room, and there was, that sort of standoff almost between the two, and then the client was probably acting in the middle, or sometimes as sort of trying to sort of manage the situation as much as anything. But they were sort of being presented a creative idea, and these are the channels that it's going to work in. That now seems to be a much more joined up process, and I think that there's a lot more collaboration between agencies and within agencies when we do everything for a client, and the clients, I think, have sort of evolved to sort of understand that that's a really important capability. So that focus across how this is going to be delivered, where this is going to be executed, bringing all of the different sort of parameters in together is something that they're very aware of. They know has to be very complementary, and so they're sort of really sort of leaning into that sort of conversation and that narrative now, which I think is much more successful. So I think they're probably the main things. It's really interesting though, of course, when there's the typical agitators like the Mark Ritson and the Byron Sharp sort of, coming out with sort of bits and pieces consistently, and marketers don't know this and should know that and what have you. But I think that's, while sometimes it can almost be sort of a little bit that everybody's doing it wrong. I think there's lots of things now that's really sort of in place to bring and lift that capability and the discipline up. So yes, there's certainly really capable marketers coming through, and well, have been always, but it seems to be sort of a much more capable discipline and very much more those mature conversations about things, which is great.
What skills and behavioural traits, obviously the teams that you've met and worked with, what do you think is missing?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, because I think what's typically happening is that there's different types of skill sets in teams, and maybe it's just some of the size of the clients that we're working with. But I think that internally, obviously, there's been a big move to agile, and sort of lots of that stuff was quite important a few years ago. But what that's brought in is many different skill sets together, and I think that then there's a complementary sort of capability within client teams. That there's sort of the gaps are sort of just been filled by others. So there's no one person now sort of required to do absolutely everything. I just don't think you can necessarily be somebody who can do absolutely everything, in all honesty. So there was the transition to agile, I don't think was an easy one for many. Processes and ways of working and interdepartmental sort of elements, walls being broken down was pretty challenging, I think. But as that started to become a bit more of the norm, and sort of collaboration seems to have sort of been the thing that's really won through, I think that most marketing teams just are pretty rounded in terms of the skill sets they've brought in. They might look for an analyst internally who can come in and build out some capabilities and sort of augment their team. They might look for someone who's got a bit of a media background, so that then that conversation with the media team is more structured. They might have also got relationships already with, say, Meta or Google, and sort of can bring those conversations in, be part of those conversations as well. And I think that then sort of, really has just been a big benefit. So bigger, more rounded teams, greater capabilities coming through. It feels a bit more joined up, I think.
Now, as the Chief Data Officer, what are your sort of core challenges?
Well, there's a few, actually. I think one of the biggest things that I see as an opportunity is for us to make the most use of the information that maybe just gets ignored. So we actually have a lot of information, a lot of capability that's around and being produced that we can do much better with it. We're timesheet based. There's lots of information that we get that sort of is being collected and sort of documented on a daily basis. I think there's sort of more capabilities that we've got there. It's a rich source of information, and really we're sort of as an agency and as I suppose an industry, we're sort of pretty traditional very often in the way that we sort of use that information. It's really just for financial billing purposes, and it really, I think, comes from something that I've been interested in for a while, which is the data economy. So this is underlying capability within every company, essentially, about the data that they've got and that they're using. Very often, I think clients are now realizing it, businesses are realizing it, that they can use their information that they're collecting. And very often we talk about first party data. We talk about using that into clean rooms. We talk about sort of how we can augment our first party data strategy and all that. But I think also what we have to realize is behind the scenes, there's even more information that we've got that is a really, really valuable asset. And so, that's something that clients...
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so I think that even things like optimization of models that may be using, or finance departments and how, individuals are sort of interacting with certain pieces of data and so on and so forth. Can we sort of optimize our service sort of usage? Can we sort of have processes that sort of take data in a sort of more an automated way from one system to another, rather than trying to migrate it over and sort of put it into a new platform? So there's lots of different bits of efficiencies that I think we can demonstrate ourselves as an agency, and then I think that's where we can also sort of look to work with our clients and sort of show them that capability and show them those opportunities. The other sort of area that is always being bandied around is artificial intelligence. It seems to be the big one that everybody seems to be talking about. I saw a comment in LinkedIn the other day. It's AI in a PowerPoint presentation. It's ML when it's in Python code, which I thought summed it up beautifully, because yes, we sort of talk about all these things that we can do, but there's lots of different efficiencies that we can build through and we can start to look at. So even if it's just small AI, it's just stuff that's out of the box. Salesforce have got Einstein, for example, that sits in Tableau. Adobe's got Sensei, and those sort of bits and pieces just tell a telemarketer that a certain KPI is outside the normal range, or it's something to be interested in, or whatever. Those little bits and pieces are probably not used as much as they could be. And I think there's sort of like the opportunities to really enhance the profile that type of stuff has, because as I said, the commenter or the sort of the title of AI makes it feels like it is going to be something that is image recognitions using security cameras and stuff like that. So it always feels really, really big, but it's actually the small bits and pieces that I think can be really valuable and can really enhance how businesses operate and sort of what capabilities they've got.
I have one more question for you, and because the premise of this podcast is about being future fit, have you got any resources or any final advice that you'd like to share?
There's a great resource at the moment that I'm really interested in, which is Better Briefs. So that's something that a couple of guys have put together that sort of, takes marketers through and clients in particular through the process of briefing into agencies to make sure that that is then a really structured, thought through process, so that there isn't, well, I suppose, so the conversation starts off from a very advanced position in many ways, but then that means that they're ultimately going to get the very best out of the agency. So yes, those guys have put something together which I think is really interesting. And then the only other thing I think is just having that consistent curiosity. There's so much happening, and so it's almost a bit overwhelming sometimes when you sort of think about the changes in tech and think about the changes in data and what have you, but just to sort of try and be interested and sort of be up to date is just really important. Google have talked about taking down the third-party cookie for many years, and then of course it's got pushed out another year. But there is that time coming, so let's make sure we're all aware of what the implications are, and it just makes our work better. It makes things more interesting.
Thank you so much for your time and your insights, James. It's very much appreciated.
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, James. Take care. Visit futurefitmarketing.com.au for access to resources and past episodes. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, share this podcast series with someone else, and thanks for paying it forward.